keep in mind that you're not stuck with those oscillators being set to what they're set to. You can change the waveforms and the octaves. So it's fun to play. So yeah, you can set those 3 different oscillators to whatever you would like to set them to. Keep in mind that we also have a fine tune to apply using these knobs. Default setting of them is coarse tune, but if we press the fine tune button, when that's on, these act as fine tuning knobs. So like we can change the oscillator frequencies. To introduce a little bit of delightful chorusing. Let's try this. So you can get a big, warm, chorusy sound there, which I don't think anybody would complain about, and it sounds great. That's a lot of fun. But yeah, so if your oscillator is, out of tune, you can certainly use the fine tune, or you can use it as a detune possibility. And you get an indication of 100 cents when you turn over here in the OLED, so you can see exactly what your setting is. And because all of this stuff is stored in the presets, you can, very specifically make specific choices about your tuning, knowing exactly what number it is. We also have a source of noise. Let's have a listen to that. So this, okay, let me see if I have this straight. I always love noise colors. This goes from brown noise, which has a sort of darker sound to it, to violet noise, which has a much higher sound to it. And then apparently in the middle, we have gray noise. So if you're looking for white noise, you're out of luck unless it falls somewhere in that spectrum. But yeah, you have a variable noise source, which we're going to have a lot of fun with because holy cow, it makes some really cool sounds. Also, let's keep in mind that if you're using square waves, we have a pulse width setting. It doesn't go to 0 on either end, so you don't have that dropping out. And if you're looking for pulse width modulation, as I'm sure some of you probably are, that can be had using a modulation source. So we'll be talking about that later. We'll talk about wavetable once we start dealing with the digital oscillators. And of course, we have the synchronization. Sync 2 syncs oscillator 2 to oscillator 1. So when that's on, that's what you're going to get. So you can hear that doing the typical sync thing again. Sync is more fun when you have an external modulation source and you're not just turning a knob. Sync 3 does the same thing, but with oscillator 3. So let's listen to that. Where oscillator 3 is synced to oscillator 1. So then it gets very complicated, and we'll talk about this when we talk about modulation. But yeah, anything you do to the pitch of the synced oscillator is going to result in the sync effect, whether that's just adding different harmonics or if it's causing that traditional sync sound that we know and love so well. Another thing we have in the analog oscillators alone, we don't have this in digital, but we can press this button, and then oscillators 1 and 2 are get frequency modulation from oscillator 3. So anything you do to oscillator 3, that the frequency modulation coming from oscillator 3 is going to affect the frequency of oscillators 1 and 2. So you can imagine you can get a lot of really cool sounds out of that, especially keeping in mind that this, like every other thing on here, is modulatable via our many envelopes and many LFOs. So once we get to that point, you can hear the joy of that effect. Of course, right now, we're not using the filter, and I have the envelope just to sustain all the way up. So we're getting a really straightforward sound, but I find that's the best way to demonstrate the various timbres, octave settings, etc. of the oscillator. Okay, we have pretty much gone over the entirety of the 3 analog oscillators. So next, we will move on to the digital oscillators.